Welcome to the Emotional Fingerprint of an Adoptee. I'm Karen Chaston.
And I'm Kim Rankin.
How you going, Kim?
Pretty well. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. And today we are going to explore the forced adoption era, which ran from 1946 to the late 70s, early 80s. And I guess the impacts of that era on so many people in Australia. That's estimated. Yes, estimated. They don't even know the actual number of children who were forcibly adopted in Australia, but it's estimated around 250,000. So when that extends out to their parents and their siblings and their grandparents, and it just goes and goes and goes, that's a lot of people who have been affected by these practices.
Yeah, and I think, it's only been in more recent times where, especially in Australia, since the federal government and state apologies, that this era has come to note and been widely discussed. Well, not widely discussed,
No,
but
it's not even widely discussed. Let's be honest.
yeah,
A lot of people don't even know about it. When Julia Gillard, the then Prime Minister in March, 21st of March of 2013, when she did the federal apology, I wasn't even aware of it. And you contacted me and you said, how are you feeling? I'm going, that has nothing to do with us. That's, all with me. It's the stolen generation. So here I am, a mother who they were apologising to, and I wasn't even aware that it was about me. And so many people we talk to have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think, for me at the time of the apology, I did watch part of it on the news, and I did think of us and how you would have been impacted during that time. But I think that the beliefs that were instilled in you were there from the age of 15, 16, the time that you were pregnant.
Yeah, from the time I became pregnant. Well, really, I was a few months in, like my parents, I was 4 months pregnant before my parents even really knew that I was pregnant. It's amazing when you're young and you can hide things quite easily, even though I was wearing a school uniform at the time, I still managed to hide it from everyone. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do something a little bit different. And if you've been watching us for a while, any of our videos, we like to do things differently because that's what we are. We are different. We are a biological mother.
And your child,
yes,
was placed for adoption in 1973.
Yes, who have come together, and through our reunion process of finally coming together after nearly 2 decades of a tumultuous relationship, we have dived deep into not only these practices of the forced adoption era, but into the emotional and psychological trauma that these practices have I want to say given, but have impacted.
Yeah, they've left a legacy.
They have left a legacy, not only, but especially for the adoptee, the child who was in so many ways forcibly removed from their biological mother and placed into the hands, into a family where they had no attunement with. They had no mirroring. They had so much that was missing from them. And today, even when they're trying to bring their nature and their nurture back together, they are ridiculed. They are told you need to be grateful. Who do you think you are to even talk about this? You're so ungrateful. So that's why we want to explore these practices. So, because we live in such a different world, and many people who they just don't understand.
Yes, and I think also that when it comes time, well, if the opportunity arises where adoptees and their biological parents can go into reunion and meet, that these times have left an impact not only on the adoptees but also on their biological parents.
Yes, and the siblings, bringing together half siblings and all of these things. There is a huge impact. of these practices. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by sharing with you a couple of excerpts from our the 8 Essential Lessons, which is our signature program where we do dive into 8 different life stages of an adoptee and through the different emotional themes that have come to light in our research, where we have dived deep. And of course, our lived experience comes into it. And some people are like, yeah, but that's just Kim's lived experience. But it's not, is it, Kim?
No, we all carry similar traits. And even though we do have different lived experiences, these traits are common amongst adoptees.
Yes, which very much starts with the initial abandonment, rejection, when you are born into the world and your limbic brain kicks in, searching for your mother, whose limbic brain is meant to connect. And when they connect, the baby instantly understands they're safe. They are bonded with the person. The emotional umbilical cord is all intact. It hasn't been severed. They are there with their mother, who they bonded with in utero. So every baby or every child, or whatever age you are, have been separated from your biological parents, your mother, you will be impacted. And the impact is obviously at the time, whatever age you are. But in the forced adoption era, most children, they were born and they were taken straight away from their mothers. So let's just have a look at these couple of inserts and then we will come back shortly. Throughout this program, we touch on the practices of the forced adoption era, 1946 to 1979, which occurred mainly in Commonwealth countries such as Australia, the UK, Canada, and New Zealand, and is known in the USA as the baby scoop era. During this time, it was common for newborns awaiting adoption to be placed in hospital nurseries for weeks or even months. These infants were cared for by a rotating staff of caregivers, which disrupted their ability to form consistent and secure attachments. This lack of stable care during those critical early weeks had a lasting effect on their emotional and psychological development. Many adoptees from this era have since dealt with the emotional consequences of those early experiences, experiencing broken attachments that contribute to long-term distress. We will be focusing on these practices and their enduring effects throughout the lessons. It's estimated that around 250,000 Australians, 800,000 individuals in other Commonwealth countries, and 2 million Americans were affected by these policies and practices. The peak of this period were between 1950 and 1975, when unmarried mothers were often forced, coerced, or pressured into giving up their children in order to avoid the societal stigma surrounding unmarried pregnancies. Today, adoption practices have changed. In Australia, newborns are typically placed in voluntary short-term foster care after leaving the hospital, allowing the biological parents to maintain contact during the revocation period as they weigh their adoption decision. While this provides more consistent caregiving in the early weeks, it still disrupts the mother-baby bond. If the adoption proceeds, another attachment break happens when the baby moves from foster care to their adoptive family. These multiple breaks can profoundly affect the child's sense of safety and security. In the US, the process is a little different. Babies often go directly from birth to their adoptive families, who are sometimes even present at the birth. This approach aims to minimise disruptions in attachment, offering a more stable environment for the newborn right from the start. Understanding the history of adoption practices helps shed light on the struggles adoptees have faced throughout their lives. As we delve further, it's important to recognise the lasting effects of the forced adoption era and how these early experiences have shaped the emotional landscape of adoptees today. The legacy of the forced adoption era, adult adoptees today. For many adoptees, particularly those from the forced adoption era, feelings of anger and frustration run deep. They often hear that they should be grateful for the lives that they've been given and are sometimes even seen as selfish when they seek connections with their biological parents. This narrative, one that demands gratitude, dismisses the complex emotional journey that adoptees undergo throughout their lives, much of which is tied to the emotional umbilical cord, the deep, innate connection that continues to draw them back to their biological roots, even in the face of physical and emotional separation. The forced adoption era, spanning the mid-20th century, saw thousands of children taken from their biological mothers under social pressure, government policies, or societal expectations. Many of these children were placed with families considered better equipped to provide for them, both financially and emotionally. Society often assumed that these adoptees had been given a better life, but for many, the material comforts of their upbringing could not heal the emotional wounds caused by their early separation from their biological families, especially their mother. By the 1960s and 1970s, social workers, psychologists, and other professionals in the United States began to shed light on the long-term psychological effects of close adoptions. This growing body of research highlighted how a lack of knowledge about one's biological origins contributed to emotional struggles such as rejection, abandonment, and identity issues. As awareness grew, it became clear that adoption was not a simple solution, but rather a complex, lifelong journey that carried emotional repercussions for those involved. During this same period, even institutions like the Catholic Church began to reflect this growing understanding. Documents like the Gaudium et Spes, issued by Pope Paul VI in 1965, emphasised the importance of addressing the emotional and psychological needs of all individuals, including adoptees. While the Church recognised the issues and growing awareness of the emotional ramifications of adoption, they did little to act upon these insights. Instead, they continued to operate unmarried mothers' homes and facilitate adoptions, often perpetuating the same harmful practices that contributed to the deep emotional scars of adoptees and their biological mothers. The Church's acknowledgement of the dignity and complexity of adoptees, though significant, was overshadowed by their inaction and their role in ongoing forced separations. Today, as these adoptees begin to speak out, their anger is not rooted in ingratitude, but in a desire for their experiences to be acknowledged. Being told to move on or that they are being selfish invalidates their need to reconnect with their roots, understand their origins, and address the emotional scars left by separation. The societal expectation for adoptees to remain silent and grateful overlooks their lifelong journey towards healing, self-discovery, and emotional well-being. For many adoptees, the search for biological parents isn't a rejection of their adoptive families. It's an intrinsic need to understand where they came from and reclaim a part of themselves that was taken without their consent. Regardless of how loving or comfortable their upbringing may have been, the need to explore their birthright remains an essential part of their healing process. This pushback against outdated narratives is part of a broader cultural shift. Adoptees are demanding the right to acknowledge both the pain and the joy of their experiences, challenging society's simplistic view of adoption as a clean break or a one-time event. Instead, they highlight the ongoing emotional ramifications that follow them throughout their lives. Today, as adoptees from the forced adoption era find their voices, they call for recognition of all that has been lost, compassion, understanding, and acknowledgement of the impact adoption has had on their life. Their anger is not about rejecting their past. It's about being silenced for too long, and now they seek the validation and empathy they deserve. Welcome back. So, there's so much, isn't there? I think we just need to take a breath and digest everything that we've just shared with you, because most people aren't aware of what the biological mothers had to endure, the practices, which Julia Gillard clearly states as being, we were manipulated, we were coerced, we were mistreated, there was malpractice. They're shameful practices. We were fundamentally lost our rights to love and care for our children, and we were scorned and shamed for being the mothers who gave up their children, as though we just didn't care about our children. And at 16, when they told me that I would forget about my child, I believed them. But I very, very quickly realised that that's impossible. There is no way that anyone can carry a child for, which ended up being 9.5 months. And I honestly believe that extra 2 weeks was just, and I'm going to call you Liza because it was Liza then. Liza was just like, no, Mum, I'm just sticking with you because it's going to be another 27 years until we come back together. So I'm just going to stay in here just a couple more weeks. Thanks. No, but in all seriousness, you know, the practices were, we were given false assurances. We were told that our child would be loved and cared for, and they would be given everything that they desire, everything that we can't give them, that we're giving them the better life. And now, you know, 50, 60, 70 years later, there are just so many adoptee stories out there where people are starting to find their voice and they're starting to talk about the way that their adoptive parents treated them.
And I think also what comes into it is that adoption's only ever been looked at through the lens of what's been gained, not what has been lost for the adoptee or for their biological parents. And I think as a mother, to be denied the right to love and care for your child, that at 15, at 16, that obviously carries a big impact as well.
Yeah, the beliefs and you know, the false assurances. What's really interesting is that when we applied for my hospital records, Kim actually got more details about my hospital records than what I was allowed to get, which is ridiculous. And it was, you know, nearly 50 years later. But in the hospital records, you know, when I went into the unmarried mother's home, it clearly stated that I was a social worker came and visited me. And she said in the papers that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my child, and that they would come and give, you know, I'd have more sessions with the social worker. And then when you continue reading the documents, the next time I see the social worker is when Kim's 2 or 3 days later, 3 days later, I think it is, and I've got the forms to sign.
Yeah.
And all the documentaries we've seen of those times of the social worker, their only job, they only had one job, their only job was to get those adoption papers signed and to use whatever means, practices, whatever they had to say, they could use that as long as they came back with that signed form. So I'm like, so where were my rights? It's you know, as Julia Gillard said, they had illegal practices.
And I think for you, from the time of being 5 months pregnant, and being placed into an unmarried mother's home by your parents, having been given what was framed to you as a choice, either get married or place your baby for adoption, which after your father telling you that you couldn't get married at 16, and no one at 16 should have to get married.
Yeah.
Really.
Even today, no one at 16 should have to get married. And in some countries, they are.
But really, in hindsight, it's not a choice.
No, it's not a choice. But what is really even more interesting is that from the time I always took it on that it was my choice. that my beliefs were I had chosen to give you that better life, that I was still in high school. I hadn't completed year, which is the equivalent of year 12. I had no job. I had no way of paying rent, board, clothes, food by myself.
Yeah.
Without us starving. It would have been thin though, if nothing else.
Yeah.
No, I'm only joking. No, seriously, that was definitely not an option. But what it is that I have took that on, and I took them on, I feel, as I didn't give up my baby. I gave her for a better life. And technically, I never had her. Like, it's not as though you were given to me and for me to go, I'm giving you my baby. So I needed that, I feel, subconsciously. I needed that as I did the right thing. I'm not bad. I'm not a bad person. And shame, when you go into shame, and I love Brene Brown, and I have studied a lot of Brene Brown, and she says the difference between shame and guilt is that shame says you're bad, whereas guilt is you've done something bad. You are not substantially bad, whereas shame is, right? So I was shamed in the unmarried mother's home, right, by the nuns, by the other girls in there who were in the same situation, and there was around 30 girls. So here I am being shamed, which is telling me I'm bad, right? So obviously for me to go, I'm not bad. Like I'm not out murdering people. I'm not bad, right? There are a lot of other things that are bad as well. So I'm just saying I'm not bad. So for me, subconsciously, unconsciously, I have said I did the right thing by my child. I am not bad. I gave her a better life. And I clearly took that on and believed it so deeply because it stopped me from saying I'm bad. And as I'm talking, I'm just realizing this is the first time I've ever connected all of this together and phrased it this way. So that in itself is really interesting. So you're in for a treat because I've really gone deep, and I've just realized that I could not let go of that. And I couldn't let go of it until what we discussed before. It was 16 years into our reunion journey in 2017, because we reconnected in 2001, that I actually could go, I really wanted you. I really wanted to keep you, and I'm really sorry that I wasn't allowed to. And was it wisdom? It was through me doing my personal journey work, from me starting to become my own best friend, for me to actually go, I was never bad. But it's that wash of society.
Yeah.
And it's society, and it's my parents, and me being guarded about who I tell and who I don't tell.
The secrecy.
Yeah, it's the secrecy, because people can't find that out about me because they might think I'm bad. And then they'll just automatically not hang out with me.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But interesting.
Yeah. And I think for me, entering reunion, where I have held on to the fact that I've needed and wanted my mother my entire life. And, for us to meet and, these beliefs that we both carried, and the fact that I had never been given words or vocabulary around my experience. So both of us were meeting with these beliefs that we had, long held beliefs that we had carried,
which society had put onto us. And why did society put that onto us? What was their reason? What was their agenda?
Well, it's in the framing, I think, of of what's been gained through adoption.
Yeah, but why were they doing that? What is the agenda at the core of why Why? Money.
Yeah.
Money. And it's really, really annoying and frustrating that we have to live apart from 27 years because the Catholic Church, society, and it wasn't just the Catholic Church, all the churches were doing it, the governments were doing it. They had an agenda, right? And it started a long time ago. It was, you have to be married to have a child, right? And if you have a child out of wedlock, you're shameful. You're bad. Like, how dare you even contemplating having sex when you're not married, right? Meanwhile, men are raping women and doing all these things. You know, I chose to have sex. There's a lot of women out there who are parents who are mothers who decided to adopt their child out because they were a product of rape, right? And that's what everyone doesn't realise. So we have a society where they believe at the time in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and even into the early 80s that if you are unmarried, you cannot bring up your child. You're not worthy to bring up your child. And then we had 2 world wars, right? We had aging parents because of these war. They weren't able to have children at the right age for them to have children, so they were childless couples. They were wealthy childless couples. All right, let's put these together, and we can be the matchmaker, and we can earn some money from this. And that's what society did. So they're forcing these beliefs onto all of society, and a lot of society just run with it. They don't stand there and go, what's this all about? And that's where we're really angry. Like, at the core of it, the only reason they separated us, instead of helping, which they eventually did in the early 70s when they started the unmarried mothers pensions and everything like that, they did start to do it. So they did slowly come to it. So we were at the end of that era.
I think, the focus on removing and separating babies from their unmarried mothers, really the focus should have been on family preservation and how can we support these mothers to ensure that they can keep their babies and that they can be raised and by their mothers.
Exactly, especially, 1965, Pope Paul VI, the Gautier et Spes, his speech was all about keeping the family unit together, 1965. 1968 in America, psychologists, psychiatrists, a deep dive into the research of the emotional and psychological impact, the trauma caused to an infant when they are separated from their biological family, especially their mother. 65, 68, 1973. I'm in an unmarried mother's home for 5 months. Kim is born in December of 73, which just so happens to be when Australia started their unmarried mother's pension. Not that I was ever informed of that in any way. And then they're still doing these practices after all of these research and speeches and understanding that their practices, they're illegal, they're barbaric practices, what they were doing to the mother and their child and the father to a lesser extent, but still to the father who were denied their opportunity to watch their child grow. And this is what we're all about. And why are we about this, Kim?
I think, for us, it's about raising awareness and providing knowledge so that people can understand the impacts of adoption, not just on the adoptee, but also on their biological family, mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
And the fact that adoption isn't just a transactional moment, it carries a lifelong impact.
Yeah.
And, I think when reunion is able to occur, that we need to look at it from a higher perspective. It's not just two people coming together that have been separated. It's also
two wounded people
that
Very
carried a bond,
wounded. Yes.
and for neither of us, we had acknowledged the fact that we carried wounds from
No,
that separation.
we didn't acknowledge that. We didn't even really, we knew that we had a longing for each other.
Yeah.
We didn't understand the emotional umbilical cord, which we will go into more depth in our next episode, because we just believed, or I just believed, well, they know what they're talking about. They know that this is the best thing for my child. And if I love my child, I will do the best thing for them. And that's where it is. It's so sad that I trusted. I trusted what they were saying. They're the adults. They know what they're talking about. We trust them. I will do what they say because this is the right thing for my child. And not knowing.
But you weren't given any other option.
Exactly.
There were no choices.
I know, but in the way they framed it,
yes,
I did have a choice. It was my
yes.
choice. And I took that on. I took on that responsibility.
Yes.
And that's where, if we had understood this when we started Reunion,
Yes.
our journey would have been completely different. Our first conversation would have been completely different right from the start. And you wouldn't have been saying things to me that you thought I wanted to hear. And I wouldn't have been saying things defending subconsciously my beliefs that had been brought onto me, that when we break it down, like we just did earlier, was me going, I'm not bad. I'm not bad. I'm actually a really nice person.
Yeah.
And if you get to know me, you'll get to know that. But of course, because of these subconscious beliefs and wounds, we didn't have that opportunity. And that's what we're about. We are all about helping people to, I guess, it's like the Wizard of Oz, pull back the curtain. What's there? Oh, there's this short little man who's making all of these things. We all love the Wizard of Oz, and it's like, let's pull back the curtain. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're literally pulling back the curtain so that people can see it for what it is. And for people who have been separated, forcibly separated, for them to actually go, firstly, for the mothers, you're not bad. You're not in any way. You were lied to. You were manipulated. You were denied the opportunity to love and care for your child. You thought you were, because they just presented it in such a brilliant manner that you went, I will take the gold gilded road to the Wizard of Oz. That's the easiest way to explain it, because I think most people know the Wizard of Oz, don't they?
And to the children who were adopted and were told by their adoptive parents that their mother loved them so much that she gave them away and that they were chosen. And
oh my God, I've just thought of the Wizard of Oz, and you think about the three that they were looking for a brain and a heart and for courage. And that's exactly the journey that we were denied and we're looking for.
Yeah.
So that's what we're about, is actually, and I love the way this is all just gone together, just out of wherever. So thank you wherever it's come from, because I think it's just a perfect analogy for people to understand that that's what we're about. We're about giving people the brain, the knowledge, and the courage to be who they are, to speak, to find the courage to be who you are. And when you follow your heart and you follow your heart, you will always end up in the most ideal place. We talk about so often, when I followed my heart to come to Sydney in 2021 when we were threatening to be locked out, that was the start of us truly. It wasn't the start, but it was a big foundation for us to spend 6 weeks together.
Yeah.
With every morning sunrise, we had photos from every single day in that 6 weeks, where we really did get to just have those deep, vulnerable conversations.
And doing nothing because we
Yeah.
weren't able to go anywhere or
That's
had
right.
nowhere to be.
That's
So we
right.
could actually spend
Yeah.
that time getting to know each other and learning to sit in our silence and
to sit in a park. And I can remember one day you said, there is no way I would have ever sat in a park with you and just sat for hours. And we were moved on quite a lot, but we just moved tables.
yeah.
But it was like, I would never have thought to sit here for a couple of hours just talking. How great is this?
Yeah.
And
so
it
lockdown
was.
to us was really a gift.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
There's always a gift.
But we've walked a very long road of reunion since 2001.
Yes.
And the journey that we've walked, we're now able to look back at those tumultuous years that were, you know,
Our lessons.
Yeah, probably 18 years of a not so ideal relationship.
Yeah, 17, 18, around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we have managed to choose
Yes, to
to
be together.
co-create a mother-daughter relationship.
And it's not easy. We're not sitting here going, we have the most perfect idea. We still have our disagreements, our misunderstandings. But the difference is we stop very quickly and we ask the question, what's this about? What's at the crux of it? What wound have we touched? How do we heal this? How do we become better than yesterday me? We're continually saying that. And we're learning. And there's always, when you open up the lotus, there's always another thing and another thing and another thing. So we're not saying we're perfect. We're not saying we have the desired mother-daughter co-created relationship.
It's just that the journey that we have walked has led us to researching to understand the impacts of adoption and not only
and why do you do what you do? Like, what happened to you? We need to figure out why your brain, I guess, is wired differently through your life experience to what would be considered as general practice.
Yes,
that's the easiest way to say it. But I don't like using the word normal because I don't think anything's.
If the separation had not occurred and the attunement and connection had occurred as per the plan of,
as in if you have, when you have a child, you grow up and everything else. So that's what we're about.
Yeah.
And I think this is our second episode, all wrapped up, all nicely. And next time we come together, we're going to dive into the emotional umbilical cord, because most people don't understand that. Everyone understands the physical umbilical cord, but we're going to dive into the emotional umbilical cord. It's important for people to understand that connection, because I feel a lot of the adoption rhetoric is that they can understand it for themselves, but they can't understand it for an adoptee. Like, they understand it with their connection, with their going back to their parents and going forward to their children, but there just seems to be a societal block on why there would be this connection, longing,
yearning,
between biological parents and adoptees
and the child.
Yes. And so that's it. That's another wrap. Thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now, and we look forward to seeing you next time.